afternoon. Certainly not the morning. It is definitely the afternoon. And happy Friday to everyone out there. Or happy Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever you listen to this show. If you're some kind of sick human being who many years after the fact has decided to go back and chronicle the early days of the Russ Joy Show, welcome in to you strange, futuristic human being. Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. And today, this morning I had an electrician over, which was good. It was totally fine. Nothing to worry about. Had an electrician over, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to get the show up. And I still don't have a good way to get the message out when the show's not coming out on time. I'm like, do I go over to YouTube? Do I post it in the community page? Do I put it over on Twitter? Do I post it to Instagram, to Facebook? Then I get like this decision fatigue, and then it never happens. Well, we're here. And if you don't watch the show live, you watch it after the fact, or you listen to it in the podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Doesn't matter to you. But it matters to the wonderful people who have already jumped in the comments section. I did this totally unannounced, and look at all these beautiful people. The beautiful people. They're all here. And I'm on my second or third cup of coffee. So we are ready for a heck of a show today. Now, on today's show,
Russ, what are we talking about? It's Friday. Getting ready to leave work. Russ, I'm getting ready to clock out. Is it really going to be worth listening?
Yes, it is.
Why? Are you gonna make fun of John Tortorella again?
Probably not, maybe.
Why are you gonna talk about the Philadelphia 76ers being under investigation?
Sure am.
You gonna talk about Marcus Hayes' unbelievably stupid lead in the Philadelphia Inquirer?
You bet I will.
Are you gonna maybe even preview the Eagles and the Bengals?
Indeed I will. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I forgot. That, of course, is the voice of Bucky. No, it's not. Bucky wouldn't sound like that. I at least don't imagine that Bucky would do that. By the way, the World Series begins tonight. I don't know how many people actually care in this area or wherever you are. Yankees, Dodgers. We could maybe talk about that later on in the show. And I actually realized the other day that I didn't really give you any thoughts on the Frozen Frenzy happening the same night as opening night in the NBA. And I had somebody comment in the video way after the fact, like,
hey, did you get into that?
And I didn't, but perhaps we should have. So maybe we'll get there as well, but I do want to go out to the comments really quick and say hey to all the fine folks who decided to jump in over on YouTube, on the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel, over at Joy Media on Facebook and on YouTube, and maybe even on X. And by the way, if you're watching on X, which I saw a bunch of people doing the other day, if you want your comment to show up on the screen, you have to click on the video first and go in and then add it in there like it's Periscope. Otherwise, it just replies to a tweet and I'll never see it. Well, I'll see it after the fact, but not right now. Josh White over on YouTube says, good afternoon, you beautiful people. Can anyone find the Flyers defense? I can't. Ford says, well. No Thursday show on CB. Kink or sick. No Russell today at 8:30, but still, Ford tunes in to show support. Ford, you're an absolute beaut and a living legend. Until you do or say something that's indefensible, in which case I will disavow any knowledge of ever having acknowledged your existence. Nico checks in with a hey at Ford. Andrew Fawcett says, you're Russ Joy. We all know that because you're smart. That's exactly right. Andrew, I like to boost people up in the beginning. I like to boost the people up. JH already with a wow and or yikes. I don't know what that's to. Maybe the coffee. Who knows? Nico says, what up to all? Andrew Fawcett being nice to people. JH checking in with a little bit of slander about Igor Zamula, a.k.a. the on-ice translator for Matvei Mishkov, says Zamula needs to go back to the aircraft carrier. Goodness gracious. Josh White says the second best show this side of the Mississippi and north of the equator. No. This is the number one show. The Press Row Show is the number one pregame, intermission, postgame show. There's a difference. Unless there is a show that is better than this one. But I boo-hoo. It would make my day. Let me know which show is better. Just let me know. Actually, we could have an even more fun conversation. I had somebody who used to work for one of the radio stations reach out to me a couple days ago, or maybe it was last week. Say, hey, you talked to the program director at one of the stations. I said, no, why? I'm like, you should, because you've heard some of the people that they have on the weekends, right? And I said, well, I have heard that. Well, no, I really haven't because I don't listen because I have many better things to do with my day. But you could find me another show. Is there a better show out there? I don't know. Could I get away with doing this show on the radio? I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say some of the things that I say. I wouldn't be able to use some of the profanity from time to time when the spirit moves me. Ford with the wearing the dad season shirt. I have one too. Yeah, it's the Philly dad shirt. My in-laws got this for me for my birthday. I appreciate it. Probably should lose a couple of pounds before I wear it without the hoodie. So we got the hoodie today. You got to be careful. Hashtag dad bod, you know? JH says, does anybody want to go in on a Flyers-themed bakery with me? We'll only sell turnovers. Oh, I love it. JH, what a fantastic... See, this is why maybe I should just do the show in the afternoon from now on. Because the humor is there. The comedy is there. Well done by JH. All right, we're going to go into some of the things that have been going on in Philly sports today. And like I said, maybe we'll even get to the World Series if we really need to. But Michael Sirkin over here says, definitely need my fix of uncensored Russ today. Michael, I will tell you, and I'm going to, and Ford here, show better than this one. Fuck out of here. That's exactly right. So Michael Sirkin, I'm going to go back to you though. I was not surprised. I did not find myself shocked by some of the initial reaction to Wednesday's episode. It's a special Wednesday episode, and then we have a special afternoon Friday episode. I should probably just get rid of saying the days and the times if I'm not going to stick to them, but that's part of the fun of this show. It's almost like a weird gift. It's like an unexpected present. It's sort of like expecting a present for your birthday, but then somebody says, oh, it's on the way, and then it like shows up a month later, or it shows up like 2 days later. You just never know. It's like your crazy uncle who just shows up and gives you a gift, and you're like, oh, my birthday was 3 months ago, but thank you, I appreciate this. And you open it, you're like, oh, it's actually a good gift. Unless you're disappointed by it, in which case it's a disappointment. And sometimes this show may be a disappointment to people. And on Wednesday, it was most definitely a disappointment to the John Tortorella truthers that are still out there. They do remain. They do. They are not as bountiful, not as plentiful as they were. But Wednesday's show was very, very interesting because I knew that some of the Torts truthers would come out. And I will say really quickly, because it's impossible to take a show and any tweet and any social post and like inject it into the brain of some of the people who respond and don't watch a show. They don't listen to a show. They don't get context. They see a tweet without actually knowing anything about where the person is said. So I just want to be really careful here when I say this. I acknowledged on Wednesday that this team's not good. I acknowledged on Thursday on Snow the Goalie with Bundy that this Flyers team's just not very good. But I did ask the question both days, is the talent really this bad? Like, is this talent so putrid at this point that it should lose 6 consecutive games, score 1 goal in their first 2 games at home, go on the road to Washington and get curb stomped? Like, I'm not exactly sure that the talent is that bad. On the whole, it's bad. But, like, you've given out significant contracts in recent years to Travis Konechny, to Owen Tippett, to Travis Sanheim, to Nick Seeler, right? You've given those deals. You already had, I mean, in the case of Briere, he already had the Sanheim contract from Fletcher. The Sanheim contract, the Couturier contract. Like, there's a lot of money invested in guys on this team, and one has to hope, if you're a Flyers fan at least, that, like, somebody's going to step up and this thing's going to turn around. Now, I don't think that this team's particularly good. I don't expect this team to make the playoffs. Do I expect them to lose 6 of their first 7? No. Do I think they're going to lose 6 out of every 7? No. It might be good for the rebuild, but no, I don't. And I merely posited the question on Wednesday's show, will the Flyers fire John Tortorella? Could they fire John Tortorella? And I did what I always do. You do it for the YouTube, because people in the algorithm, they find the clips even more than the episodes. So I clipped out a big chunk of Wednesday's episode about, will the Flyers fire John Tortorella? And I could tell by the comments that there were some people there who didn't know, had never come across stuff that I've done before. Because they're like, well, excuse me there, sir. Couldn't help but notice. It seems that you don't seem to understand that the Flyers are a bad team. Or I get the, excuse me, sir. I don't suppose that you've ever listened to Danny Briere. He is the general manager of the team. He has said that they're in a rebuild. I'm not sure if you're aware. And I try to be nice in the comments, right? I try to let people know. I do, in fact, know what Danny Briere's had to say. We interviewed him a bunch of times over on Snow the Goalie in the Press Row Show. Yes, I know. I know what a rebuild is. I know what the plan is. I've had some conversations with those people away from the cameras. I have an idea of what they're doing. And at the same time, I'm allowed to sit back and say, the talent's not very good, but I'm not sure that the talent is this bad. And I think that they've tuned the coach out. Well, Wednesday's reaction has been quite the thing. And I'd almost encourage some of you wonderful people, especially the psychos in the comments. And I say psycho very nicely. We love the psychos in the comments. Go to the clips. Go to the clip of Wednesday's show. Go read some of the comments because there's some wild stuff in there. One guy said, I think it was on the clip from this show. It might have been on one of the Snow the Goalie ones. But he said something about, it was like, addressed to me, it was like, you and Fat Neck Tony, which is what this one strange troll who goes after Anthony on all these different platforms, want to see Torts fail. Every single player under John Tortorella has gotten better with the Flyers. To which I very, very nicely, I have to ask the question. Una pregunta, por favor. I have to ask the question. If every player's gotten better under John Tortorella, why have they lost 6 straight games? Why have they looked absolutely rudderless? Why has the energy not been there? And then those people tend to not respond. Like, they're very quick to comment, but they're not quick with the reply. But it's a couple days later, and I'm just going to allow that maybe they're running on dial-up internet, and it's going to take them a few days to respond. And I do look forward to their responses. But that was Wednesday's show. Now, do I have a lot of vitriol to come to the table with on a Wednesday for the Philadelphia Flyers? After all, we have to talk about the Sixers being under investigation. We have to talk about Marcus Hayes. We have to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. We are not talking about, oh no, we will. I promised people on Crossing Broadcast that I would talk about, or no, I think I did talk about it. No, never mind. I did it. I did it on Wednesday's show. I did talk about the Union. We talked about the Union on Wednesday. Kai Wagner saying they got to actually try to win games, get winning players, not just worry about the homegrowns. We did that. So we have 2 other teams to talk about. We are not going back down the Phillies road right now. But I have to cap off this Flyers talk really quickly, okay? There are times when I feel like I'm nuts, but I know I'm not, okay? I think the biggest fallacy, I think the biggest sham, misnomer, whatever you want to call it, about doing this, talking into a microphone and assessing, analyzing a sport is that it's hard. It's not. Doing this isn't hard. The people who do the X's and O's and they do the full breakdowns and they have all of the names about the actions and the motions when you're watching LeBron James set up an alley-oop to Anthony Davis like I saw a few nights ago, like that kind of stuff is a little bit more intensive. It is. The people who do the active scouting of college and the minors, and in the case of basketball and certainly hockey, the international leagues, that's hard. This part isn't particularly difficult. It's just a matter of, does your message resonate with people and do they keep coming back? And they do. All of you wonderful people. But it's not hard to see what's happening with the Flyers right now. And I watched Wednesday. We did the show. I say we because you guys are part of it. We did the show Wednesday. And I was like, well, the Flyers got to look better. They have to do better than they did on Tuesday night. Bundy said on Press Row Show after Tuesday's game, oh, boys got to play better tomorrow. And guess what? They didn't. They looked arguably worse. They had a couple of moments. Matvei Mishkov picks up a couple of points, gets a goal. Very nice. But they never really felt like they were in that game either. And I came out of Wednesday's game and into Snow the Goalie on Thursday with Bundy saying, there's a serious problem here. Like, this isn't just, oh, very disappointing. What a shame to watch the Philadelphia Flyers continue to struggle, but at least they're playing hard. At least they're working hard. At least the culture that we've heard about for a few years now is holding this team together. The culture is the thing that we will bind these men together. Their talent may not be there, but that culture, it will work as a mortar. It will hold the bricks of this team and the foundation together. And instead, the Flyers have kind of looked like some of those houses in Rodanthe in North Carolina. And I love the Outer Banks, but in Rodanthe, where they're pretty much, beach erosion has taken away solid footing, and you see an occasional house floating away. This has nothing to do with the hurricanes. It was happening earlier in the summer. We were watching houses kind of float away. That's what the Flyers are like right now. That strong foundation, that mortar, that thing that was supposed to hold everything together isn't there right now. If it were, The Flyers wouldn't be getting boat raced on a night-to-night basis. The Flyers wouldn't look absolutely dreadful and dismal. That isn't how they would be playing. You would at least be able to walk away saying, they're not good. However, they're playing hard. They're playing for one another. And I go back to this comparison a lot. And there's this weird thing that happens. The hockey-only fans can't wrap their head around it. The basketball-only fans can't really wrap their heads around it. And then there's like this weird group of people like me who like both, who can wrap their heads around it, okay? When the Sixers were bad, when they were actively trying to lose games, when they were fully in the tank, those teams played hard. They weren't good. They weren't remotely close to good. We're watching like Hollis Thompson and Vanderblue. They had to go back and trade multiple seconds after the league institutor had the Colangelos come in to go back and reacquire Ish Smith. Like, those weren't good teams at all, but they played hard. You knew that if you were going to buy a very, very cheap ticket on the secondary market, because God help you if you paid for full market face value of a ticket during the process years, you at least knew, all right, the Sixers team's not good, but they're going to play hard. At least we have that. At least we can bank on that. You don't get that with this Flyers team. And the big problem is that, like, that Sixers team, all those Sixers teams with the many players, those teams didn't have the talent. Even when they got Joel Embiid, navicular bone break, doesn't get to play the rookie season. They get Ben Simmons, misses his rookie season. They get Markelle Fultz, no recuerde. He doesn't remember how to shoot the ball. Not good, but it's okay. You would at least feel like they're adding the pieces along the way. The team's not good. They're adding the pieces. It's not getting particularly better. However, there are signs of life and there's hope on the horizon. And they didn't have a ton of nasty, ugly contracts holding down the ceiling of the team. The ones that they did were contracts they went out and acquired to get better draft capital. But they knew that by the time they wanted to flip the switch, they'd be able to get out from under many of those deals. Okay? Well, what has happened with the Flyers? They don't have that top-end talent, but they do have a ton of mediocre players making a lot of money. They have a lot of mediocre players with a lot of term on this team. But when this thing is actually ready to flip the switch in a few years, most of those guys should not be here and probably shouldn't have spent the years leading up to it on this team because they make the team just good enough to not be total garbage, but still not bad enough or still not good enough to keep them, to get them into the playoffs. There are players that to me are kind of, well, they're like a physical embodiment of mediocre. And I mean it in a respectful way. I know it sounds really bad. I mean no disrespect. Scott Laughton is a wonderful player, good role model, good leader, just had a kid. Congratulations. Just had a child. Excellent. Will be a fantastic bottom six forward on a team that needs that kind of player and is trying to win a Stanley Cup. And if Scott Laughton, God forbid, got traded to the New York Rangers, I would actively, on a human level, cheer for Scott Laughton to go out and give it his all. And even though I don't like the Rangers, I'd say, you know what? Good for you, Scott Laughton. If he went to Boston, I hate those teams. If he went to Boston, I would have a really hard time. But I would still, on a human level, root for him. Like, good for you. But he's a bottom six forward. That's his ceiling. And the Flyers have given him contracts. The Flyers have actively chosen not to trade him for high draft capital. I guess on the assumption or the hope that they would turn this thing around faster than expected, or because they thought his leadership was somehow going to prevent what we've seen, where the team just kind of zombies their way through games. Travis Sanheim, a good player, not an elite player. I'm starting to worry that there's a point at which you have to acknowledge that he might not even be a top pair defenseman, that his ceiling might ultimately be a number 2 guy, and he is under contract until the 2030s. Holy shit. Now, in fairness, that was a Chuck Fletcher contract that was given out right before his first game ever playing for John Tortorella, but still, that's a huge contract and a big amount of money. And I get that the cap is going to go up, and I get that the percentage of the cap that contract's going to count against is going to go down. It's still a lot of money, and there are a lot of teams that want to trade for it. Now, Laughton's case, he's not making a ton of money. Laughton will still be attractive on the trade market. Sanheim, not so much. Konechny was given this 8-year deal. I like Travis Konechny. Again, good leader, well-liked. Everybody enjoys him. They enjoy his presence. He's the kind of guy that gets under your skin. He could score 30 goals. That's not the point in the rebuild. And he's not 24. He's not 23. I think is he 30? If he's not 30, he's close to it. I think he's up to 2 kids now. The only kind of psychos that have multiple kids before they turn 30 are like me. He's 27. I'm wrong. But by the time the team's ready to turn the page, he will be 30, 31. Do I think he's going to be a great player at that point? No, I don't. He's a small guy. He's a young guy. Like he's not a huge dude. And those kind of players don't age well in this league. Now, maybe if they outlaw hitting in this league, perhaps he will age more gracefully. But he's about my size with more muscle than fat, admittedly. But like, I don't see a long-term future of Travis Konechny being incredible for the next 7-8 years. I don't see Travis Konechny becoming a 40-plus goal scorer. He's a really good player. He's probably not worth the money or the term. And at a time when you're in this rebuild that you've admitted and gotten the good graces of the people, that's the kind of guy you start a bidding war for. The bidding war of 2024. MJF didn't need it, so why not TK? Could have been the bidding war of 2024. Gotten some good draft assets. Maybe gotten a change of scenery candidate like an Owen Tippett, who was like maybe 22, maybe 23. And then by the time you're ready to flip the switch, maybe you have another guy that's on a decent contract, on a lower contract, perhaps on a lower commitment. I feel like I've relitigated many of the things that upset me, but all of these things came rushing back up to the surface on Wednesday. They didn't get better. They didn't get better at all. And now you have back-to-back games this weekend where we will be doing the Press Row Show on Saturday afternoon against the Minnesota Wild, on Sunday night against Les Habitants de Montréal. You have those games as well. I'm not exactly going out of my way here to say that I think the Flyers are going to be in good shape. You cannot allow this losing streak to go beyond 6 games. If this gets to 7 by Sunday, if this gets to 8 by the end of Sunday, I don't know what the Flyers do. I don't think they're going to fire their coach. But if this continues, could I see him gone by Thanksgiving? I think that is still in play. If he actively does lose the locker room, I do believe that the Sean Couturiers of the world have a kind of relationship with the Danny Brières of the world that if the message is not only falling on deaf ears, but the players begin to feel like there's petty actions being taken, which I think I said last week and I said earlier, the Couturier fourth line thing was very petty. I think if the leadership group of the team goes to those people, goes to the front office and says, enough's enough, then maybe it expedites things. Now, is it possible that the Flyers could go out and win 2 games this weekend and all of a sudden people start feeling better? Yeah. Does it really change much? No. All you should hope for if you're a Flyers fan, whether you like Torts, whether you don't, whether you like these players, you don't, you should hope that they at least come out and they look like a competent team. Because to this point, through 7 games, they certainly have not. I'll go over to the comments here really quick, and then I think I want to get off the Flyers. Dersh says to bring the heat. Josh White says, assuming Fedotov plays one of the games this weekend, if he plays awful again, does he get sent down? No, I don't think there is a part of me that thinks deep down inside, Danny Briere and Keith Jones look at this and say, no, this is fine. It's okay. Like, again, if the leadership group of the team hasn't gone to them and said, Torts actively bad, Torts actively eroding trust in the locker room, if they're not there and you're losing games and you feel like the culture is still being upheld, installed, all that, no, I think they probably leave Fedotov in because losses are ultimately what get you in a race to the bottom, which in turn potentially gets you to the race to the top of the draft. I just want to point out this other thing really quick before we go. You know, I get this bad rap, even on Snow the Goalie. I get this bad rap because I talk about you want to have one of the worst records in hockey. And I always get pushed back by one of my co-hosts, not Bundy. I get pushed back by one of my co-hosts that, you know, Russ, just because you lose a lot of games doesn't mean you're going to get lottery luck. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the top pick. And I always say, yes, but the lottery is done for a couple of picks at the top of the draft. That's it. They don't do it for the entire first round. They don't do it for the first 15 picks. If you have the fourth worst record in the league, or the third worst record in the league, you can only get jumped by so many spots. If you finish with the worst record in the league, you're not going to fall out of the top 3. You're not going to fall out of the top 4, out of the top 5. You know, if a team jumps from 12 up to 1, it doesn't then mean that everybody gets pushed down a ton. So the worse record you have to start, to go into the draft lottery, the better chance you have of ending up somewhere near the top. And that ultimately is where most of the star players live. You might have a really good scouting department and a really good front office who can find a guy at 15, 17, 21. But this Flyers team hasn't exactly been elite at finding that. Even if you like Jetlachenko, who's a nice player, I don't think he's Ivan Demidov, and I would have much rather be in position to get Demidov this offseason. And if you had finished with a bottom 3, bottom 4 record, you probably would have been in position to go out and get a guy like Ivan Demidov, who, by the way, will be playing another year or 2 in the KHL. And then when he comes over, we'll be on year 1 of a low-priced ELC like Mishkov is right now, and you'll have one of your 2 potential top stars ready to go. All right, I'm going to keep going. Reed DeFord says Tankadelphia. JD Reds with a yo. What up, man? Hello, JD. He's got the Trump McDonald's thing. I hope that some of the people who, we're getting close. I can't wait for the election to be over. I have seen so much crazy stuff going on in my timeline. I've gotten weird, crazy tweets. It's really funny. My group of friends, I have very left and very right, and there are like very few in the middle. And I mostly am like in the middle. There are some things that I'm over here and some things I'm over here. But I'm not like off the screen here and I'm not off the screen here. But if you kind of like balance it out, I'm somewhere around here. And I get some of the weirdest, craziest things where I swear there are times that I'm like, everybody has lost their mind. Everybody's just lost it. Like if there are undoubtedly going to be people that if I kept JD Red's comment up here for too long and they saw that,
oh my gosh, he platformed somebody who has Donald Trump as his profile picture. We must boycott that show.
There's somebody who would do that. And I'll tell you what, if somebody had a Kamala Harris picture as their profile picture, I guarantee there would also be somebody who'd say, what, stupid, I can't wait for the election to be over. Let's just get it done. Get it done. Although we all know it's going to take a very long time to tally the votes. Somebody's probably going to complain that they didn't lose or that they have to recount. It's going to be a close one, allegedly. Depends on polls. We're not going there. We're not going there today. JH says caffeinated Russ is way more fun than a coked up Paul Bissonnette that we get treated with during hockey games on TNT. I can neither confirm nor deny that being the case. About Biz and the Coke, I have no idea. I would hope not, for his sake. We'll leave it there. Ford says, I wonder if there's a psychological component to this where these guys know they aren't a playoff team, so they let up even more and trend worse than they should be playing. That's possible, Ford. Like, that actually is true. There is a possibility. See, again, allow me
to reset the deck.
The Sixers comparison, right? Sixers process days. Those guys didn't dog it because very few of those guys were either legitimate NBA players or were guys that knew that they could loaf. They weren't making a lot of money in most cases. They didn't have a ton of experience or a lot of good film in a lot of cases. They were hungry to get a 10-day contract. Then they were hungry to get from that 10-day contract to get to another one and then eventually try to get a guaranteed contract, if even for that year. This Flyers team, I wouldn't call it entitlement, but you could certainly say like, hey, some of these guys who are making a lot of money, why would they finish their checks? This Flyers team isn't playing exactly a physical brand of hockey. I think that might be fair. Andrew Fawcett notes, you're a little nuts, but you're our nut. I'll take it. Durst says, on the upside, Russ, we're 2 for 3 on sticks broken over the net after Wednesday. It's true. I think Tippett snapped one. I forget who the other one was. Let's see. Eric Berkey saying the Flyers look like a monkey in a football. It's not just the team itself, but now I think we start to question management. I'm not totally there on management. The only thing I've ever really questioned about the management side is, would Torts be able to get away with some of the things that he's gotten away with if it were a more experienced front office? Like, do I think that a highly, like if Yzerman were the GM, do I think he'd get away with this kind of stuff? I don't. Do I think that if like I don't like this comparison, but like a Lou Lamoriello was the president of hockey ops, so I think Torts would get away with this. Like, I'm not exactly sure that he would. Does that mean that it's a good thing? Does it mean it's a great thing? No, I'm just not sure. Let's go to Ford with he liked the Ish Smith reference there. Eric said, I thought maybe they could pull off the contend and build, but it's obvious you can't, and you have to finish low and build top 5 picks. This is the thing that I kept coming back to last year, where like I would get upset. Now, I think everybody knows at this point, especially over on the Snow the Goalie side. I love Bundy and I love Ant. I just officiated Ant's wedding. There are episodes where I get done with him that like I'm upset and angry with him. He says stuff when the cameras aren't on where I'm like, I'm going to push you off the balcony. I would not, in fairness, I wouldn't push him off the balcony. I couldn't do that. Ant has lost a lot of weight, but I have not been to the gym in a bit. I don't like my chances of Royal Rumbling him off the balcony. But I will say that there are times where like we get a little bit contentious. Ant kept coming back to this idea last year that what they were trying to do, especially late in the season, was pull off this contend and build. You can't do both. It's impossible. There is a fractional percentage chance that you can do something like that. The only way that you can contend and rebuild at the same time, which is practically non-existent, is you can have the pick of another team and watch that team fall in the standings and at the same time try to win on your own. So if the Flyers had Chicago's pick last year and you're watching Chicago in a race to the bottom, the Flyers could have actually gone after. They could have made moves at the deadline and said, yeah, we want to actually go for the playoffs because we know we're getting Chicago's pick and it's going to be awful. But the likelihood of you having that is practically non-existent. They had Florida's pick. The Florida pick was there. Florida was a very good team. Doesn't work out the same way. They have the Oilers pick. The Oilers are going to be a very good team. It's almost impossible to do it. Almost impossible. Josh White says, Lautner Johnson has to be gone by the deadline. I agree. Eric says, anybody over 27 should be traded because this team isn't going to contend for 4+ years. We have a lot of young guys, but the older assets need to go. I agree. Now, I see a lot of other comments here. I want to see if there's anybody that I can also mix in here. William Gordon over on Facebook says, even though he's young, how far do we go with Joel Farabee? I was at the game the other night, and the Boo Birds were really loud. I don't know. Farabee, to me, is actually one of the most intriguing players that could be dealt, but in fairness, I kind of expected them to deal him in the offseason. I thought that the coaching staff was a lot lower on him at the end of last season than maybe they were, or perhaps the trade market just never formulated. Like maybe that was it. Maybe it never came together. Let's see. Okay. Now I want to take this from the Flyers. Spent like a half hour on the Flyers, which I didn't mean to do. And I want to go over to the Sixers really quick because there's something bananas that happened with the Philadelphia 76ers. We talked about this on Wednesday's show that the Eagles, or not the Eagles, I just saw an Eagles tweet pop up, that the Sixers weren't going to play Joel Embiid and that Paul George was going to be out because of the hyperextended knee. But the Sixers said Embiid's not playing, and not only is he not playing, but he's on track with the plan. And we listened to that Nick Nurse clip the other day where Nick Nurse really couldn't give a reason for why Joel Embiid wasn't going to play in the home opener, despite the fact that they said that, it was part of the plan. Well, we got a tweet from Shams. Since we don't have Woj bombs anymore, we have to go to Shams, which I don't know what we're calling them now. I don't think they're called Shams bombs, although that's actually kind of fun. But Shams put this out on game day. The NBA is likely to commence an investigation into the Philadelphia 76ers surrounding the player participation of All-Star Embiid, or All-NBA center Joel Embiid. Sources told ESPN. More to come on NBA Today on ESPN. And then that continued, and they eventually did put the Sixers under investigation. It actually started yesterday because he was ruled out for the first week due to injury management. You had two things that went wrong here. This is why the Sixers are so unbelievably maddening. The Sixers have been really bad at messaging to the public, especially since Harris Blitzer Co., since that whole group, HBSC, since they took over. They have been horrendous at explaining injuries, timelines, diagnosing things correctly, or at least passing that on to the public. There's no world in which you have your MVP, Joel Embiid, play in the Olympics, not look good in the Olympics, by the way, except for the one game, play in the Olympics, have the entire offseason where he's then supposed to like be in good shape and is supposed to be on this like delicate regimen and then be ready for the regular season, and then you're going to try to make sure that he's ready for the postseason. And like here we are, and they're saying, well, no, the plan is going according to plan, the plan, but Joel Embiid isn't going to play on opening night, and he's not going to play for the first week of the season, but that's part of the plan. And at the same time, Joel Embiid went on to a podcast and said that he's not going to play back-to-backs probably for the rest of his career, which was one hell of a line and led Kevin Garnett to have an F-bomb laden tirade, which we also played on Wednesday. Horrific, not good if you're trying to sell the fan base on being excited about the team. This isn't how you do it. So the Sixers are under investigation. Joel Embiid's nowhere to be found. And then all of a sudden, we had something happen that we have not been blessed with in quite some time. We had a holy shit, what were you thinking moment from Marcus Hayes. Marcus Hayes, who is a columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I love the fact that no matter what, we always end up in these really weird places where columnists kind of get a little bit more leeway. You know, like the beat people have to go down. The beat writers have to go down. And they have to play it, you know, very down the middle. You know, you gotta be objective here. Okay, fine. But columnists get to have a little bit more color, a little more pizzazz, a little bit more flavor to what they're writing. Well, sometimes things go sideways. And sometimes when those things go sideways, you get the dog shit lead that Marcus Hayes wrote in a story that I still can't believe he wrote. And in a with an image and a headline and everything that he put together. Now, I will say, people who write for a paper, for a blog, aren't necessarily responsible for their headlines. They might not be responsible for the chosen image. What they are responsible for is their words. Now, I want to show you this really quick. So, Marcus Hayes, a couple days ago, 3 days, this is the same day that Shams announces that the Sixers are going to be under investigation, probably. So this goes out through the Inquirer's Twitter page. Now, I mentioned to all of you, I'll come back here really quick. I told all of you when I started this show that we're going to talk about the teams and also the media that cover them. And I think sometimes you have to have somebody who is willing to call out bullshit when they see it.
Hello, that is me. That is me. I am the one who does the calling out of the people. That is me.
Okay. So I'm that guy. Because I didn't see a lot of people, even on local blogs, calling this out. I didn't see or hear a ton of clips of people on the radio calling this kind of shit out. So, okay, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. I'm here for it. So what do we see in this picture? We see Joel Embiid. I believe that's Joel Embiid's wife. And that's Joel Embiid's son, Arthur, who's named for Joel Embiid's brother. Okay. That's what we see. Then we see that there's a headline. There's the text in the tweet. Joel Embiid disrespects the Sixers, the game, its greats, and himself. Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley are right to rip him. This was written by Marcus Hayes. What did Marcus Hayes have to write? Because you could see some of the comments here. They weren't exactly positive. Oh, good question. Let's go to it, shall we? Here's what Marcus Hayes had to write. In the midst of Joel Embiid not starting the season, we have an image that he might not have picked that had Embiid and his son, his little son, small child. Okay. Now remember, these are Marcus Hayes' words. These are not my words. I actually feel kind of gross about having to say them because the fact that a person,
Despite being a columnist, we have to be very careful. You have to be careful, Russ. Columnist, he's a columnist. He's allowed to say what he wants. He's a columnist.
okay. This is what Marcus Hayes, who has decades of experience bloviating and writing some of the dumbest shit I have ever read, and apparently is very high up on the totem pole still at whatever is left of the Philadelphia Inquirer sports department. This is what he had to say. This is what an experienced journalist had to write. Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son, Arthur, as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great and to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. Embiid has been great at just the opposite. Now in his 11th season, he consistently has been in poor condition. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut this season. Embiid won't play in Wednesday's opener or the next 2 games. Okay, let's just go back here a second. Can we re-rack it? Can we take it back to the top? The lead, the first thing that you read if you pulled up this putrid pile of dog doo-doo, is he points to the birth of his son, who's named after his brother, who was tragically killed in an automobile accident his first year as a 76er. That's the lead. And then you say if he wants to show respect and be good at his job, he has to show up for work. Are you fucking kidding me? Is that what we're doing now? Is that what we are doing as a Philadelphia media skip? This is why people hate Philadelphia media. This is why people don't trust the media. This is bullshit. This is the kind of thing that, like, if this had been written on a blog 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, if this had been written on Crossing Broad or the Liberty Line or the 700 level, people would have been calling for the revocation of credentials. They would have been calling for the cancellation of a site.
And yet, this man writes for the Philadelphia Inquirer. This man is still writing for the paper of record in the city of Philadelphia.
Here's the worst part. I mean, as if it weren't bad enough that, like, he conceptualized this. Marcus Hayes is like, how do I write down yet another column tearing down Joel Embiid? How do I begin that? Here's an idea. Yes, let's think. What is a tragic thing that has happened to Joel Embiid in his career? Well, he lost his rookie season to a navicular bone. How do I start with a lead? No, navicular bone. That doesn't do it. Perhaps we go with the fractured orbital bone from Markelle Fultz's shoulder. No, that doesn't have the same. Let's start by mocking the son named after the dead brother. That'll do it. That's the way to do it. Fire. That's going to get so many subscriptions to the Philadelphia Inquirer. We're going to continue the push. Let's bring everybody over. Let's get all the paper people to come over to the digital subscription, and they're going to read Inquirer.com instead of Philly.com. Philly.com, too complicated. We're going to go Inquirer.com. Okay, cool. Marcus Hayes is out of his mind. And the best part is, when these people saw the reaction, when the Inquirer and the sports staff, when they saw the reaction to this, it wasn't even that, like, the editor. I have questions. I have many questions. The editor. Did the editor look at that and say, that's not very good? I don't think it's going to go over well. Did the editor have that moment? Did that editor, who I'm assuming hasn't been there as long as Marcus Hayes, did they get overruled? Did it go to somebody at the paper outside of the sports department? I have no idea. And I'm going to even, like, take this. Let's continue to take it a little step further, because I could show you what Marcus Hayes tweeted in promoting the story, and we'll come up with a sane judgment here for the first time seeing it, if it's fair or not. Unconditioned Joel Embiid is missing the first week of Sixers season, a month after signing a $193 million extension. And as indicated, he'll play about 60 games a year for the rest of his career. Imagine Dawkins, Kelsey, Bednarik, or Iverson doing this. Well, that's incredibly boring and lame and lazy, but I'm not surprised that that's where Marcus Hayes went. Now, there are people who have pointed out the fact that it's kind of hilarious that Marcus Hayes, of all people, is pointing out somebody being poorly conditioned. I would not go that far, because he's a writer and he's not in the prime physical state of his life. But other people did say that. I'm not one of them. Now, I will go back to what Marcus Hayes then tweeted after he got called out for this bullshit. Here's what he said. Let's go over. What did Marcus say? So, I rewrote the lead to my column and replaced the picture. I can see why so many people were upset about it. Sorry about that. Thanks for all the constructive criticism. Oh. Marcus, you're forgiven. You know what? Who could have known that that was going to be a really terrible idea? Who could have known that an image of a guy's young child and then calling him onto the carpet and mentioning the dead brother, who knew that that was going to be incendiary? Who had any idea that that could possibly go overboard? You know what, Marcus? It's okay. Bullshit. Also, there's a lot of condescension here. We're going to go back to it one more time. We started off with a so. Oh, okay. We started with interesting. Okay. Interesante. So, and then, sorry about that. Oh, okay. How about we just have like, I don't know, a little bit of grace, a little bit of decency, a little bit of, I don't know, mea culpa. I rewrote the lead. It was a poor decision. I apologize to anyone that was offended by it. I apologize to the Embiid family if they were offended by it. Maybe that's the way that you go. But that's not what Marcus Hayes did. He put out a pithy kind of a quote tweet about it. And the thanks for the constructive criticism is also hysterical because, as you can imagine, he's responding to the people on Twitter who are some of the most incendiary bunch of people that you will ever see. And those people certainly didn't say,
Oh, Marcus, did you think about maybe just rewriting that? Did you think about the feelings that you might hurt and poor feelings that you're going to cause other people?
no, they didn't do that. I mean, people I'm sure were nasty. I would assume that Marcus Hayes had death threats. I would assume that Marcus Hayes had people making fun of his physical appearance and all kinds of other stuff in his DMs. I fully expect that is true. Okay, and he did not go out and he didn't look for sympathy after that and he didn't say you should see my DMs. Like, I can pretty much guarantee you that that stuff was in his DMs. Almost guarantee it. But you have to be more responsible than that. What are we doing here? Like, are we that desperate? I know it's coming from somebody who did freelance blogging on the side, while wrapping up his career as a teacher. I get that, it might seem rich for some people, coming from me, of all people, the looking for clicks. But is that what we're doing now? Because that is not even shoddy journalism. That's not even, poorly decided, poorly constructed thought processing by a columnist. That's just bad. That's just, on a human level, that's really, really bad. It's inexcusable. I'm going to go over to the comments, and then I have one other thing that I want to get to really quick. Okay. Ford says, anyone with a brain knew once Joel played in the Olympics that this is exactly what would happen at the start of the season. In fact, go back to old Russ shows. I said it repeatedly, and he did it too. Thank you, Ford. I think we all kind of knew in our hearts and in our minds that, unfortunately, him playing in the Olympics was probably going to lead to this. Nobody should have been surprised. Andrew Fawcett says, calling out bullshit is Russ's mission statement. It kind of is. I enjoy it. I really do. I think it's almost like not a media watchdog thing, but it's kind of like we just got to call it. And by the way, when I say something stupid, I'm fine when people go after me for saying something stupid. I'll respond. I typically tend to reply to people. I don't do the Mike Missinelli. Mike Missinelli is very condescending in his replies. I'm very dismissive. If somebody comes to me and says, I think that was a really bad point, here's why. Or hey, you're a dumbass. A lot of times I'll reply. The tone might be a little bit different. But unless you're horribly, woefully offensive, or we've gone way off the edge, I'm fine with it. You can call it. Call me out on a bad take. Call me out on something I've said on the show, something I've written. And when I'm wrong, like I was about the Phillies-Mets attendance, I will tell you that I was very wrong. Now, Eric Berkey over here doing the Lord's work, saying hit the like. That is true. Everybody, you need to hit the like button. It is very helpful. It helps the algorithm. It's all good. And don't forget, after the episode, go into the regular comment section and put something there. Ford, noting about the lead to that article, insensitive and callous. Joe Papel says, so nothing has really changed, talking about Marcus Hayes. Ford says, don't appeal to people's lost loved ones, but Marcus Hayes has always been a douchebag. Those are Ford's words, not mine. I don't know if he's a douchebag. I don't know if he's a good feminine hygiene product or not. Going back to the DNL days on Comcast Sportsnet does not surprise me at all. I think that's he's always kind of had. Here's what I will say about Marcus Hayes. I've talked to him a couple of times in person, not for very long. Seemed like a nice guy. On a human level, talking to him, seemed like a nice enough guy. I don't totally get why there seems to be a very big disconnect between that guy and the one that you read or that you used to see on Daily News Live. Maybe that was it. Cryptic Cowboy, thanks for checking in. Says, hope you're well. I am well. I'm looking forward to this weekend doing 2 press row shows over the weekend. And I'm happy that we got to do this together on the afternoon. Ford asks, do you remember on Daily News Live with Barkan? Yes, I do remember. I do. Interestingly enough, I have had a run-in with the other columnist, with Sealski, where Sealski got upset that I called him a liar. And I think I've now litigated that on this show and on Snow the Goalie, that I said, well, if you don't want to be called a liar, then don't lie. It was the thing about around the Voracek thing, about it calling him a weasel. There was like a whole thing. I worry about some of these columnists. I worry about there's an entire like group of people in Philly media that like, I'm not going to put out a list. If I really wanted to like start a firestorm, I could. There is a list of people in Philadelphia media, whether it's written, radio, or TV, that I genuinely worry about, in that they are incapable of handling criticism. Like, if I lob the grenade on like Crossing Broadcast, for example, if I say, hey, 97.5 on the weekend is really bad, and they should think about reprogramming it and, bringing in podcasters and all kinds of stuff, and just see if they can jolt it, because they pretty much have no ratings at this point on the weekend. Like, what's the worst that'll happen? I'll then get people who do shows on the weekend who are like, are you talking about me? I thought we were good. I thought we were cool. And I've had this conversation with a couple of people in the past where I'm like, no, you're fine. I mean, like, the ratings are the ratings. Like, you're fine. Do a good job. You try your best. That's all we can ask for in this life. But there are people who get really upset. There are people who do their shows in some of the major time slots who get very upset if you call them out, who get very upset when people tweet at them negativity. I won't go into which station is which. One station, I think, handles things a lot better and will almost kind of play they see a negative tweet and like, well, hey, thanks for listening. And maybe it's with a little bit of that condescension. Maybe it's with a little bit of sarcasm. But then like there are some people at the other station who actively just like try to like take the grenade, throw it back, and then like drop a nuke as well. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like the goal is to have listeners. Like the goal is to try to stir up conversation. Maybe controversy, but that's that part of it. There are people in this city who like, I just don't think have ever been told something negative about their work before, and they don't know how to process it. I get this shit all the time. Okay. Going back to the early Crossing Broadcast days, there'd be times where people would be like, I wish this was just Lefko and Kyle. I don't know who this Russ guy is. I don't want to listen to him. And then over time, we started to get to a point where it's like, oh, I like all three of these guys. And there were still people who didn't like me, or there were people who didn't like Lefko, or there were people who didn't like Kyle. In a weird way, Crossing Broad was a perfect place to go and just get a very thick skin. Now, if you attack me personally, like in a very horrible manner, like, yes, I will certainly respond, and probably not in a great way. But on the content of a show, the content of written work, you can certainly lob things, and I will defend myself, and I'll tell you why I think I'm right. And perhaps history will show that ultimately my thought or my opinion on something was right. But if it was blatantly wrong, I'll tell you it was blatantly wrong. Because I think that's just kind of what we need here. We have a lot of people who kind of do the dodge, duck, and dive. Not the dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Not the 5 Ds of dodgeball. They do like 4 of them. And the problem is, those people, they pivot so much. One week, it's Nick Sirianni's the greatest thing. The next week, it's he's horrible and I've never said he's good. But like, if you go back and you pull that other clip, they're like, well, I didn't say that. It's like, well, you very clearly did. The Philly media landscape is just a very strange place. And the thing that's also interesting is you have a lot of younger people that are kind of making their way into media and are trying to break into the written medium like the Inquirer. And you have people that are trying to break into radio at both stations. And I wish all those people a lot of luck. But then I look at some of the people who are the older heads and I'm shocked, absolutely shocked at the way that they interact with people. I listened to 97.5 afternoon show in the car a few days ago. I was almost mortified by the way that one of the hosts, who many of you can probably figure out, was talking to some of the people who had a dissenting viewpoint. And I said to myself, this isn't how you get people to listen in. This isn't how you get people to come back to your show. I like to make a lot of comparisons to pro wrestling. There's good heat and there's stay away heat. Good heat is you have somebody who is like has done such a good job with their character that you actively want to, like, you love to hate them. Or maybe you do hate them. But like you also kind of accept the fact that, like, all right, this is their persona, this is what they're doing. Go away heat is like, you are so bad at this, none of this is resonating, please get off my TV. And I think that the problem that the Fanatic has, at least with one of their hosts, maybe a couple, but especially one, is it's like, go away. It's like, I actively don't want to listen to this show because of how this person is talking to the listeners. Now, I've listened to WIP's afternoon show, and I get that there are some people who don't like the current mix or who think that like the show has changed a lot since Marks. I hear that. It is a different show. It's going to be different anytime you swap out one part or two parts, or you go from one 3-man booth to a different 3-man booth. But like, I don't think it's go away heat. I think it's more of like, there are people who actively want to call and spar with the hosts. And I think that that's actually okay because those people keep coming back. It's wild. Some people can't handle criticism in this city, but I'm here. I'm here ready to spar with whomever. Now, if Marcus Hayes wants to come on the show and defend himself and defend his lead, I always extend that invitation to anybody who might listen to this show, who might have the show sent to them, anybody from the Philly media. And if there's somebody from Philly media who wants to come on the show and would like to try to defend the Marcus Hayes lead, or would also like to pile on, or would like to offer their thoughts, I encourage them to come on the show as well. We'll see if anybody does. We'll see if they want to. Joe Papel says, Snow the Goalie Press Row Show tomorrow at 12:30. Joe is doing the Lord's work. He's doing the producer's work. For a second, I was like, this is a weird comment. And then I remembered I just did the dodgeball reference. Do you drink your own urine? It's sterile and likes the taste. Patches O'Houlihan. That movie would never be made now, but my God. The last time I traveled to New York for work, I sat in the hotel room and it was dodgeball. And the next time I went into the hotel room, it was Man on Fire with Denzel Washington. And something about those two movies took me back to like my late high school, early college days. I haven't laughed as hard as I did at dodgeball. And I had all these feelings going back and watching Man on Fire now that I have kids. Well, that movie hits different. Definitely hits different. Okay. I think that's where I want to leave it. Now, I know that in the description and in the beginning, I said Eagles-Bengals and that I was going to preview it. Here's the preview because it's very short. The preview is we have no idea what to expect from this weekend's game. The one thing that we have to hope for, like Eagles fans have two things to look for. Is the defense able to generate the same kind of pressure against a better Cincinnati Bengals offensive line? And better is a loose term, but a better offensive line, and against a quarterback who certainly is better at making quick decisions and is far more accurate and just an overall better player at the position in Joe Burrow. Will the Eagles be able to generate anywhere near the same kind of pressure they did against Daniel Jones? I don't expect them to go out and get 6 sacks. Are you able to get 2-3 sacks, but at critical moments, throw off his timing enough to create potential jump ball situations where maybe Quinyon Mitchell finally gets his one interception or his multi-interception game that it feels like he is on the cusp of? Like, will that happen? I'll be interested to see what happens in the return game because Vic Fangio came out this week and said that he doesn't want to see Cooper DeJean returning kicks or returning punts. And eye test here, I thought Cooper looked really, really good in the return game. I'd almost argue that to some extent he looked better than Britton Covey did. But I can understand why you don't want one of your most impactful young defensive backs out there playing special teams as well. Totally get that. Now, the Bengals this season, they got off to a horrible start, but this is what the Bengals do. The Bengals do traditionally get off to very poor starts to the season. They have won 2 straight after starting the season 1-4. A win on Sunday would get them back to 500. And also, I mean, like things are a little bit wonky, right? Because the Steelers and the Ravens both enter the week at 5-2. I'm doing like the Bernie Sanders says, Bernie Sanders. A win for the Bengals would pull them, at least temporarily, 1 win behind the Ravens and the Steelers. However those games play out kind of doesn't matter. The Bengals can probably start to envision a scenario where they can get back in the race for the AFC North. So this is by no means a regular game against a below 500 team. Now, I don't know if the Eagles are going to find the same kind of success. Like Saquon Barkley, right? We expect the Eagles are going to try to get him involved early and often. But again, it's the Nick Sirianni issue we have here. If Barkley is incorporated early enough, and the Bengals do have to account for the run game, and it does open some things up, then we know that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to find A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's about all we know. How will the offensive line for the Eagles look? That we still don't know. I think that some of the backups had a decent enough game against the Jets that I start to feel like just a little bit better. I start to feel a little bit better about like, all right, you maybe are able to stem the tide until you get back like a Jordan Mailata. Maybe. On Tuesday's show, we will break down the Eagles-Bengals game. We will react to whatever happens with the Flyers over the weekend. Like I said, they can't let this get to an 8-game losing streak. They might, but they really can't. They really shouldn't. We'll see how that plays out. We'll also check back in on the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't remember the last update about Paul George, about whether or not he's going to play this weekend or not. I hope, if nothing else, they're obviously going to take it easy with Paul George. You don't want to exacerbate a bone bruise or an issue and a problem with that knee that has already been a problem in Paul George's career. You don't want to make that worse just for the sake of trying to rush him back. I will say about the Sixers here briefly and their game against the Bucks. I expected them to lose. I said on this show that I fully anticipated a scenario where the Sixers weren't going to have a great game against the Bucks. They kept it very close in the first half. They kept it close even into the second half. And I think the score that I threw there as a joke was 118-92, and it ended up being 124-109. So kind of close, not exact. Ultimately, I looked at that Sixers team and I said, all right, well, between Gordon and between both Martins and Drummond, you look like you have a good supporting cast. Like, even without Paul George and even without Joel Embiid, like, I think that Sixers team that we saw on opening night, that team can probably beat most of the teams in the Eastern Conference and certainly the lower half of the Western Conference. And man, does it feel good to have Andre Drummond back. The biggest standout thing for me in that game, in all honesty, it wasn't Tyrese Maxey going out and having himself a decent enough showing and looking like he can command the offense like we all know he can. It was seeing Andre Drummond create multiple opportunity after multiple opportunity on the offensive glass and just in general on the boards on both ends of the court. That's something that this team desperately needed last year and has missed since they dealt him away in the Harden trade. All right, now with that, we are going to head out. I will talk to all of you on Tuesday. If you haven't done so already, like the video. That's huge. Seriously, like the video. Share the video with somebody else, another Philly sports fan in your life, and subscribe to the show. We are very close, ladies and gents. I know that I've talked about the drive to 500 subscribers, and for a little bit there, it felt like, oh, we're pretty far away. The channel is at 398 subscribers. When we get to 500, which we're getting close, When we get to 500 subscribers, I will pull the name of one random YouTube subscriber. That person will get the jersey of their choice. They're going to let me know. It could be a Phillies jersey, an Eagles jersey, a Sixers jersey, a Flyers jersey. It could be a Union jersey. It could be a non-Philly sports team jersey, which would actually be the worst troll job of all. Like, if I had to buy somebody a Boston Celtics jersey, I'd be very upset. Like, if one of you wins and says, I want an Al Horford jersey, I might throw up in my mouth a little bit. But that's just part of the giveaway. So the drive to 500 subscribers, we're getting close. So do me a favor, like the video, share the video, subscribe. And if you listen in podcast feeds, you can find this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all for joining me. I know this was a mostly unannounced show. I think there was like an announcement that came out on YouTube and Facebook like 5 minutes ahead of time, but I want to thank all of you wonderful people who joined me live in the comments. You're amazing, every single one of you. I will talk to all of you on Tuesday, maybe even on the Press Row Show on both Saturday and Sunday. If you're going to be at the Flyers games, come up to the balcony level right over by the sports book, the Snow the Goalie sports book, wink, wink, and the Oregon. That's where we set up for the Press Row Show. If you want to come up, say hey, chat a little bit, we'll be up there. So hope to see some of you there, and I will look forward to talking to all of you next Tuesday here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a great, great weekend, everybody. Talk to you very, very soon.